The conflict in Ukraine has entered a new phase, marked by attacks extending deep into Russian territory. After 3 years of war, Russia is facing a reality it likely did not anticipate. The central question remains: what will be the endpoint of this conflict? Ukraine has begun adopting a bold offensive strategy, using conventional weaponry, drones, and long-range weapons to strike critical points within Russian territory. These actions have sent shockwaves through Moscow, demonstrating that strikes are no longer confined to the front lines, but penetrate deep within Russia's borders. Over the past week, targets such as an oil depot in Vonas, the Lukoil refinery in Volgograd, and a gunpowder factory in the Tambov region have been successfully hit. A recent and significant example is the destruction of a gunpowder factory near Tambov, an attack that undermines Russia's capacity to produce ammunition. Russian cities, engulfed in fires and chaos, are increasingly feeling the consequences of the war. The question now is, how will the Kremlin respond to this internal threat, given that a war once perceived as distant has now reached within its own borders? As the conflict progresses, it becomes clear that Ukraine is employing a well-calculated strategy aimed at weakening Russia's military and economic infrastructure. This war of attrition, now nearing its 3rd year, is evolving into a competition of resources and technology. The Russian military, already weakened in terms of personnel and equipment, is suffering additional losses due to these precise strikes. Ukraine destabilizes Russia's military-industrial complex. These attacks demonstrate Ukraine's ability to operate deep within Russian territory, destabilizing both Russia's economy and morale. Ukraine's Secret Service, SBU, has emphasized that these actions deliver heavy blows to Russia's military-industrial complex, targeting key locations such as factories, refineries, and air bases. The impact of these attacks threatens to shake the Russian economy, already weakened by sanctions and structural issues. As Russia's economy faces major challenges, high interest rates, inflation, and severe international sanctions, its long-term prospects grow increasingly grim. Although the Kremlin tries to project an image of stability, the economic reality tells a different story. Signs of a potential economic collapse are becoming more evident, highlighting the fundamental limitations that have hindered Russia's ability to sustain the war from the outset. Russia's economy continues to be propped up only superficially by unchecked government spending, but this facade of economic growth masks significant vulnerabilities. Defense spending has surged dramatically since the conflict began, now accounting for nearly 40% of total government expenditures, draining resources needed for other critical sectors. At the same time, the collateral effects of war, such as labor shortages and the massive emigration of educated young people, place significant pressure on the economy with long-lasting implications. Since the conflict's onset, international sanctions and the structural limitations of Russia's economy have diminished its capacity to sustain the war effort. While official economic indicators attempt to project stability, the reality suggests the imminent threat of economic collapse. The crucial question is whether such a collapse could lead to severe internal unrest, potentially even a civil war. History teaches us that empires that refuse to confront their colonial past are often doomed to face their own internal fractures. In Russia's case, accumulated tensions and latent frustrations could evolve into destabilizing movements spreading across the country. While such a scenario might seem distant, the history of European empires shows that no empire can endure indefinitely. Strategic targets struck deep inside Russia. The security of Russia's nuclear arsenal is a major concern for the international community, particularly in the context of growing internal instability. As Vladimir Putin continues to cling to power without addressing Russia's imperial legacy, the risk of internal conflict becomes increasingly evident. Building global partnerships and understanding the social and political complexities within Russia will be crucial for managing a potential power vacuum in Moscow. After all, none of Europe's great imperial powers retain their empires indefinitely. Why should Russia be an exception? The future of this state is unpredictable, But one thing is certain. The war in Ukraine has drastically altered the course Russia was on. This reality was recently illustrated by the bombing of an oil depot in the Vonnes region. The local governor, Alexander Gusf, initially attempted to downplay the incident, claiming that air defenses had destroyed multiple drones without causing damage. However, later released videos showing massive fires at the oil depot forced him to acknowledge the extent of the destruction. In one of these videos, a woman in the background expressed her anger and fear over the aftermath of the drone attacks, reflecting the growing tensions among the Russian population. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues its offensive, targeting critical components of Russia's military infrastructure. On the night of January 14th, Ukraine conducted a large-scale operation, deploying over 140 drones and long-range missiles, including US-supplied ATACMS and British-manufactured Storm Shadow missiles. The strikes targeted locations more than 1,100 kilometers from Ukraine's borders, showcasing Kyiv's ability to penetrate deep into Russian territory. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine later confirmed this attack. Ukraine's recent strikes have targeted multiple strategic objectives in Russia, including chemical plants, refineries, ammunition depots, and key air bases, such as Engels in the Saratov region. This base holds special significance as it is used by Russia to launch long-range bombers attacking Ukrainian cities. The strikes on Engels caused major fires and significant damage to ammunition depots, where cruise missiles, flying bombs, and other powerful weapons were stored. Previous attacks on January 8th also caused large-scale fires. The governor of the Saratov region, Roman Buzyn, reported damage at 2 industrial sites and emphasized the intensity of drone use in these attacks. He stated that air defenses intercepted most of the threats, but the attacks still had a significant impact on the region. For example, schools in Engels were forced to switch to online classes due to the risk of further strikes. Previous attacks on January 8th also caused large-scale fires. The governor of the Saratov region, Roman Buzyn, reported damage at 2 industrial sites and emphasized the intensity of drone use in these attacks. He stated that air defenses intercepted most of the threats, but the attacks still had a significant impact on the region. For example, schools in Engels were forced to switch to online classes due to the risk of further strikes. Further afield in Kazan, the capital of Tatarstan, an attack targeted a liquefied natural gas storage facility, triggering a significant fire. Emergency services responded quickly, and local authorities confirmed there were no casualties and only minor material damage. War as an accelerator of global energy changes. These attacks highlight a strategic shift in Ukraine's approach, which goes beyond merely defending its borders and aims to disrupt Russia's ability to sustain its military efforts. Kyiv's bold and well-coordinated strategy is redefining the balance of power, placing additional pressure on Moscow. At the same time, Russia is facing increasing internal challenges. Each attack exposes vulnerabilities in a system previously considered invulnerable. While the course of the war remains unpredictable, it is clear that the dynamics of the conflict have fundamentally altered the regional and global order. As global alliances continue to adapt, the impact of this war transcends Ukraine's borders. Western support in the form of advanced weaponry contributes to recalibrating geopolitical relations, exposing fractures in the international landscape. This conflict is testing global commitments and redefining the positions of states in a rapidly transforming world. The humanitarian consequences of the war in Ukraine. The humanitarian impact of the conflict in Ukraine is profound and impossible to ignore. Millions of people, internally displaced or forced to flee their country, face immense uncertainty. Many have found refuge in neighboring states, underscoring the critical role of the international community in managing the refugee crisis. Collective support will be vital not only for maintaining regional stability, but also for rebuilding a devastated Ukraine, a task that will require unprecedented international cooperation. The war has also sparked a global debate about dependence on Russian energy resources. Russia's position as a key energy supplier is now being challenged, prompting Europe and other regions to seek more diversified and sustainable solutions. This shift could reshape energy trade in the long term, accelerating the transition to renewable sources. While the conflict is deeply destructive, it acts as a catalyst for significant transformations that could define the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. Growing dissent in Russia. In Russia, waves of discontent are intensifying, and calls for independence are growing louder. The so-called Parade of Sovereignties is re-emerging. Militias are organizing around Moscow, and support for the current regime is faltering. Although a civil conflict on the scale of past events seems unlikely, the collapse of the centralized state could reopen the path to independence for regions colonized by Russia. Indeed, history does not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. An uncertain future, but full of possibilities. The fate of empires is inevitable. All of them collapse, and Russia is no exception. However, this perspective comes with significant risks, not only for Russia, but also for global stability. The greatest concern lies in the safety of Russia's nuclear arsenal. Managing such a scenario would be crucial for the West, which must avoid chaos similar to that which followed the dissolution of the Soviet Union. While control over nuclear weapons was successfully maintained then, the current political instability does not guarantee a similar outcome. A potential power vacuum in Moscow could complicate the management of the nuclear arsenal. Therefore, in addition to security measures, the West must develop a deeper understanding of the ethnic and political complexities of the regions colonized by Russia, such as Tatarstan, Chechnya, or Yakutia. Investments in diplomatic relations and cultural education could provide essential support for stabilizing the post-Putin region and ensuring an orderly transition. Ultimately, these measures could contribute not only to global security, but also to shaping fairer political structures in the post-Soviet space. The future is uncertain, but a proactive approach by the international community could turn a potential disaster into an opportunity for stabilization and progress. History demonstrates that no European empire has endured forever. Why should Russia be an exception? In the end, any analysis of this nation's future must take these historical realities into account. What is your opinion on this comment?